Welcome. I'm a member of the Worship Committee of First Unitarian Church of Alton. At this time, we're facilitating these online services until we can gather safely again. My name is Peg Flack, and Christine Ilewski will be joining us in this service for you on Sunday, December 6th, 2020. A special welcome to you if you're exploring our fellowship today. We're a free and spirited community dedicated to the responsible search for truth and meaning. Here we seek wisdom beyond our own experiences, being in rightful relationship with one another, within our community, and the planet. We come from a long heritage of teaching that there is a spark of the divine in everyone. We are Unitarian Universalists, and we're glad you're here. I invite you to take a moment to greet each other in the comments as we come together to begin our worship service. And now, our prelude. We have a tradition in our fellowship of lighting a chalice as we begin our service, as we speak these words. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs, We light this beacon of hope in celebration of the life we share together. I have known our pulpit speaker for today's service for several decades. My daughter babysat her twin girls when she was in high school and college, and those two daughters of hers are now adults. I followed her artistic endeavors over time, attending many art opening receptions, remember those? And have truly appreciated witnessing the evolution and shifting of her pieces over time. So for our opening words today, I'm going to share some of her art that has found a home here with me as a way to introduce her to you. This first piece of art is the first thing that I acquired of Chris's. And in my mind, this was my three friends, Pam, Pat, and I, and the three Ps, and this is us. Although this actual art was completed many years before Chris and I even knew each other. I look at it as this preview, and that's really me in there. I don't know which one's me, but I've enjoyed pondering that over the years. The second piece of art is something that I acquired next, and in my mind, what I see is two faces in that face. I see something very profound and very loving, and this art has always spoke to me, so it has a special place in my home. The third piece I acquired a few years back, and that is a series that she had that was in an art show, and I enjoy it a great deal. The fourth piece, this one has a very interesting history. I lived in a different house that was very earth-tony, and I had a lot of art in there that was brown and fall colors. But when I saw this picture in a Chicago art fair opening that she was having, and it had won some sort of award, and I looked at it and went, oh, I love that, but it just doesn't fit in my house at all. Well, then I moved out here to the lake, and the first thing I thought when I saw this one blank wall was, oh, I wonder if that artwork's still available. That just like speaks for this. It looks to me like it belongs in this home. And I got a hold of her, and it was available, and so I purchased that for my home. And it has you've seen it in many of the services I've done. It's usually in the background. The fifth piece I acquired just a year or two ago, and Chris, like many artists, said, well, it's not done yet. It's not done. And I said, no, it's perfect. I like it just the way it is. She wanted to add a few more layers. I said, no, I like it just like this. So I have enjoyed her artwork over the years, and I've enjoyed sharing a little bit of it with you. And now we'd like to share a bit of Christine's newly published book, Present to the Poor. Young Larry loved sports. He joined the baseball team at St. Rita's School in St. Louis, Missouri. His selfless attitude made him a good teammate. After high school, he went to Texas to work at his uncle's horse ranch, where he was introduced to Father Jim Smith. Father Jim challenged Larry to consider a spiritual calling. He joined the Oblates of Mary Immaculate and was ordained in 1963. He was sent to teach high school in Minnesota and traveled to Mississippi to register black voters. He felt drawn to the poor and oppressed. The loss of innocent lives troubled him. He became convinced that nonviolence was the best approach to peace. He joined anti-Vietnam War peace activists in 1968 who burned their draft records while holding a prayer vigil, and along with other protesters was jailed. After he was released in 1975, Larry felt called to help the world's poorest people. In Brazil, he believed that he could serve best by living with them on the streets. Known there as Father Lorenzo, he scavenged street vendor stalls, picked up discarded vegetables and fruits. He cooked soup over an open fire. No one was turned away. In 1981, he returned to the United States. Protesting a Texas nuclear plant, he was jailed again. His activism continued on many levels over the years, eventually ending in El Salvador for almost 6 years. In 1993, he was sent to a mission in Guatemala during a civil war. In late 2000, he returned to Belleville, Illinois, to be with his mother, who was ill. He stayed in Godfrey for a time to write his memoirs. In 2008, he followed his heart back to Guatemala and to the people he had come to love, working with AIDS patients, prisoners, and poor street people. On May 18, 2009, Larry was driving 3 priests to a meeting in northern Guatemala when his car was stopped by masked gunmen and he was shot twice. His killers were never found. At his funeral in Guatemala, the people who loved Father Larry came for miles to bury him, shouting, "Presente Padre Lorenzo." All proceeds from the sale of Present to the Poor benefit Faces Not Forgotten, honoring young gun violence victims. Our readings for today's service are 2 excerpts from our Gray Hymnal. They speak to the theme for today's service. Number 462. I shall take my voice wherever there are those who want to hear it, the melody of freedom or the words that might inspire hope and courage in the face of despair and fear. My weapons are peaceful, for it is only by peace that peace can be attained. The song of freedom must prevail. Our second reading is also in the Gray Hymnal, number 562. A lifelong sharing. Love cannot remain by itself. It has no meaning. Love has to be put into action, and that action is service. Whatever form we are, able or disabled, rich or poor, it is not how much we do, but how much love we put in the doing. A lifelong sharing of love with others. And we have a little bit of UU trivia to share today. This congregation first called Reverend Charles Andrew Farley to be their minister, and he gave his first sermon in a rented hall on December 7th, 1836, right here in Alton. So tomorrow is the date that we commemorate as the founding of the Unitarian Church in Alton. It's to be noted, however, that prior to Reverend Farley, Reverend William Greenleaf Eliot would be, on occasion, he would come up the river to give a sermon, so Alton had heard a little bit about Unitarian Universalism prior to Farley. However we meet, in person or online, we are held in love and find communion with each other. No walls confine us. May our faith be strengthened, and may our practice of loving kindness enrich all lives.
Hi, good morning. My name is Ilewski, and I'm a member of the Alton First Unitarian Church. I think I've been a member off and on, probably since the 80s. I sought a place in the 80s when my oldest daughter was a young teenager, to a place where I thought she would feel safe in developing her beliefs. I was raised in the Catholic Church, and I was married in the Catholic Church, and I respect the traditions and history of the Catholic Church, but I had found as I became an adult that I am a much more spiritual person than a religious person. And I've always had difficulty with the idea of just one set of beliefs, because I think that there are, like spokes on a wheel, many, many ways to find your center. And I'm not sure exactly how I came to that within a pretty rigid upbringing, but it has served me so well to find the Unitarian Church, where there are so many beliefs and such acceptance of everyone's belief. And over the years, I've learned so much by meeting all the people and the wonderful kindness that has been offered me at the Unitarian Church. I'm always shocked, even today, when I lapse for a while and I'm gone and people say, and they're so happy to see me, instead of us shaming, where have you been and why haven't you attended, that kind of, reprimandy thing. So it's home, it's family, it's a safe place. It's a safe place to be who I am. I'm an artist, and you'll often see me when church is in session, sketching in the back, sipping my coffee because I can bring my coffee to church, and just taking it all in. I love that our church has such a rich history, and the church itself means so much to me, with the stained glass windows and the beauty of it and all the individuals in it. So I'd like to introduce to you today a virtual presentation that I have made during COVID here. It is a recording of a physical presentation that I normally give to universities when we put on an exhibit of my project, Faces Not Forgotten. The project was started about 10 years ago when I lost a close friend to gun violence, and that compounded other losses. I had lost my dad to suicide as a kid. So I was dealing with that. I began the project, and today we have done hundreds of portraits of children who have lost their lives to gun violence, thanks to many, many generous, kind artists that donate these portraits. What I've come to realize throughout the years doing this project is the art itself has the power to shift people, to grow their consciousness, to raise awareness, and that is the second half of our mission. So when we put on these exhibits, we are trying to raise awareness of this loss, that these children die on the rate of 8 to 10 a day in an age category of 20 and under. But I think that art itself, the visual, has a power to shift our collective consciousness. And I hope through the presentation you'll be able to understand that also. I'd like to also mention a little plug for a children's book that I did called Present to the Poor, recently published. That is it is the life of Father Larry Rosebaugh, who is a missionary and social justice advocate, civil rights activist, who was murdered, and my friend. This book is available through our website, facesnotforgotten.org, for a donation and a gift to the project. So thank you, and I look forward to any conversation and discussion we might have afterwards. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to share my screen here with you with a PowerPoint that I have. I'll count on Devin to give me feedback if I've got a problem here. So I am the founder and executive director of Faces Not Forgotten. And we are artists who paint portraits of children lost to gun violence, age 20 and under. So this project, we give the original portrait to the families to give comfort, and then a copy of that original, the family gives us permission to make a copy into what we call the Faces Not Forgotten quilt panels. And those are the quilts that you see in your gallery today. So what I want to talk to you today about is what I believe is the power of art as a social justice expression to elicit empathy and therefore to shift our collective social consciousness, and how we attempt to do that with the Faces Not Forgotten project. Edgar Degas said, art is not what you see, but what you make others see. And Bansky said, speak softly, but carry a big can of paint. I really love that one. So I want to do a little exercise with you for just a minute, which is going to seem very strange since we're all virtual here, because I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Don't fall asleep on me, but just for a few minutes, I want you to close your eyes, and I'm going to list through just a short list of some very iconic art pieces that I believe we all hold in our unconscious, our collective unconscious. And when I mention this piece, I want you to visualize it and then pay attention to what emotion you have when you're visualizing this piece. All right, so if you're ready here, picture the Mona Lisa by Da Vinci. Can you picture this portrait that is over 500 years old? Okay. Can you picture the Pieta by Michelangelo? Larger than life sculpture. How do you feel when you picture that? Can you picture Dorothea Lange's black and white photograph, Migrant Mother? She's got the 3 children with her. Can you picture Norman Rockwell's portrait of the little girl, Ruby Bridges, being escorted into the newly segregated school? The title, The Problem We All Live With. Can you picture the Hope poster of Obama during his election? And then finally, can you picture the AIDS quilts when I say the AIDS quilts? All right, open your eyes. That was a brief thing. Hopefully I didn't lose you all on that for a minute. Come back to me here. So let's just talk about those pieces for just a minute. The first one here, the Mona Lisa. What do we all think of when we see this image? And I would say that hopefully with a show of kind of virtual hands there, were you able to picture this image in your mind? Were you able to see this young woman's face and her, what is it about this portrait? It's the engagement of her eyes. Is it the, the wistful look, the sorrowful smile? Why does that image stay with you? Why? What is it about her? Here's the Pieta. So I would have to honestly say the first time I saw this in person, I burst into tears. I was very overwhelmed by my reaction to it, but it's larger than life. It's reflection of a human condition and the power of this mother's grief. Same with Dorothea Lange's portrait here. This mother is not looking at us, she's looking away. But when you look at this photo, it stood for an entire period in our history of depression and the migrant Dust Bowl families that had to relocate. So this image by Norman Rockwell is, decades old, and yet doesn't it still resonate with us and hold in our mind? It became symbolic of a part of the civil rights movement, and yet its relevance today. The AIDS quilts, what blows my mind about these, they were completed in less than a year because individual families sewed the quilts from remnants of someone they had lost. So suddenly a moment in history when we were losing so many lives to this disease that we didn't understand and couldn't quite really relate to. But when they laid him across the mall and the numbers were translated into something physical and visual for us, suddenly the AIDS epidemic had humanity. And then the Obama poster. So again, a reflection of humanity and a part of our culture with the single word hope. How did that also get embedded into our consciousness? So for me, what started this whole project, the Faces Not Forgotten project, was a single moment when I lost this friend of mine, Father Larry Rosebaugh. He was a social justice activist, he was a missionary priest, and he was gunned down in Guatemala about 10 years ago. And when he died, my own personal artwork really stopped. I felt like my own work was irrelevant. I wasn't sure anything I was doing had any great meaning. And I wanted to do something, and I knew that he had been quite an activist for children and issues of loss of life among young children. So I Googled gun violence and children, and I came up with numbers that were unfathomable. Today, we lose over 3,000 children aged 20 and under a year. We lose 8 children, mostly of color, every day. 8 children a day in this age bracket of 20 and under to gun violence. So I knew the stories, I had seen the news, and it occurred to me that I couldn't remember or picture a face. I did not have a photo in my mind or an image or a person. It was just a number that I didn't have any emotion for, and yet it's a horrific number. So I Googled, in finding gun violence-ish stories, I found the story of William. And this is the first portrait that I did for the project about 10 years ago. William was 16 years old. His dad had made a memorial page to him because he was on his first day of his first job, working at a fast food restaurant in the Chicago area, when it was robbed and William was shot and killed. And I contacted William's dad, Bill, and I said, this beautiful photo of your son, would it give you any comfort if I did a portrait of William for you? And Bill said yes. And that began a conversation that Bill and I are still in touch today. So this was the portrait that I did of William, and I mailed to his dad. And then I asked him, would it be okay if I kept the original image to exhibit so that we could remember William? And he liked that idea. And Bill helped me with our initial family submission form. So this is the Faces Not Forgotten quilt panel of William, the very first portrait and quilt panel. And what I did there was drop the background out of the portrait and put it onto a handkerchief background. In the beginning, they were physically copies that I was making on actual handkerchiefs. So in my work, always I have worked with domestic fibers, specifically fibers and things that I felt that women have handled. So hankies, clothing, drapes, towels, things like this. And the handkerchief to me symbolized a mother's grief. So I picked the handkerchief as the background. And then usually on a handkerchief, there's often a floral pattern. So it makes like a floral wreath around William's head. And that floral wreath also to me represents the funerary wreaths that we lay on graves. So I did about the first 16 portraits by myself 10 years ago. This is Tyrese. He was 9 years old, a little boy in St. Louis. He was sleeping in the back seat of his dad's car when there was a drive-by shooting, and he was shot and killed in his sleep. This is Nikki. She was 19 in the St. Louis area, and her baby, Jason, only 9 months old, and they were shot and killed in a domestic violence situation. This is Ramel. Ramel went to the grade school that my daughters did. He lived a few blocks away from me here. He loved math and basketball, and he was waiting to go to basketball practice when two teenagers got into an altercation, and he was shot and caught in the middle of that and killed. This is Chelsea Harris. Chelsea she had just graduated. She was looking forward to going to college. She was being mentored by the chancellor's wife at Washington University in St. Louis. And she and some friends were walking on the streets of St. Louis when they were caught in the middle of a drive-by shooting also. And she was shot and killed. So these young lives full of hope and promise. In 2013, I won the Critical Mass Award for the project. Here we had about 40 portraits in the St. Louis area at that time. And that was the beginning of bringing them out and exhibiting the portraits, inviting families and artists and the public to come and engage with them and experience them and see these young lives. So I started to take them everywhere. I took them into, this was a fun pop-up exhibit that I took a U-Haul out in front of the Contemporary Art Museum, and we had a pop-up exhibit, and we invited people that were going in and out of the museum to come over and engage with the portraits. I've taken them back numerous times to the Crime Victims Advocacy Center because we never contact families directly. So working initially with the Crime Victims Advocacy Center in St. Louis, families were contacted respectfully and given our information, and then we would do the portrait. So here families would come to meet each other, to meet the artists, and we would have a respectful memorial each year for the families. And we've continued to do this. Recently now, they have been virtual memorials. We took them to galleries and invited speakers and musicians to respond to them, to tell stories and families to talk about their children, to talk about the circumstances, to demystify and to just break away from some of the misconceptions around the loss of lives. Many of these children have died in the circumstances like I just said, where they were caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. We took them to the Missouri State Capitol, hoping that legislators would be impacted. We took them to coffee houses for people to engage with. And then I created this street banner that was the first sort of quilt-like combining of them all. And we took this to events like the Boys and Girls Club in the St. Louis area, where we could talk to the students. And then often we would have a student come, or someone come up to us who had lost someone, and we would engage with them and offer comfort and offer a portrait to them. We took them to church memorials. And we took them to the first Moms Demand Action events in St. Louis. So we actually precede the Moms Demand Action about 5 years ago. And we took them on the streets. So they have been in the Women's March. They have been in the March for Our Lives. They have been in private marches that we have done for families. So in this case, we were carrying the street banner. The young man up in the right-hand corner is Jared Elm. We carried this with his family in a march and protest about his death. He had been killed stepping off a school bus, and this is the location of where he was shot with his family. And it meant so much for the families to visually see their children's faces. So our moms come out with us and march, and we support them for any memorial that they have had. So this is Odale's mom, Vonderette, and Ramel's mom. I took them to the first Wear Orange events. This was something that happened when the young woman, Hidea Pendleton, was shot and killed. She had participated in Obama's inauguration, and then when she went back to Chicago, she was killed. And they, every year in early June, they have a memorial event called Wear Orange for her. So these were the first Wear Orange events. And then we went to Chicago. So in 2016, we went to Chicago for the first time. Today, we are working on about the 10th quilt for Chicago. We did over 40 portraits in that first year in Chicago. It was completely overwhelming trying to collaborate with the moms support groups, Purpose Over Pain, and Brady, and the Artists of Chicago. So here we had an event where the mothers were coming to pick up their portraits in an exhibit that we had in Chicago. We really don't do this very often. Mother support groups, when they are giving out the original portraits, may have them out on a table or hang them on a wall like this, but we don't normally exhibit the original portraits. There can be a difference in style and technique, and we try to unify them with the quilts. So here we are in Chicago. Every year for the past few years, I've participated in an event at Northeastern University called Art in Response to Violence. Speakers come in, it's an art therapy conference, and we've now had one of the original Chicago quilt, a copy of that is in the permanent collection at Northeastern University. On it, up in the corner there, Delphine Cherry is standing in the center. She has lost 2 children, a son and a daughter, to gun violence 20 years apart. Delphine is a good friend who has been with me through a lot of this. When we've done these programs, often students have come up to us afterwards. And so Araceli, standing on the corner there, is holding the corner with her brother Miguel's portrait. She was a Northeastern University student who had lost her brother. And when she came up to us a couple of years ago, then we were able to do this portrait of Miguel and put him on a quilt. We just started to take them everywhere. We would have a minister try to speak a few words of comfort to the families at the opening of these events. The families would come out. This is Tanya's mom finding her daughter in the exhibit. And our promise to our families that their child would not be forgotten extends to, so this is Brandon, just a little boy who was killed when he and another child found a loaded gun in the lower corner there, Brandon. And this is his mom many years later and her grandchild. So this would be his niece today. So actually this exhibit took place in a space that his mom attends church. So she wrote to me how much it meant to her that every Sunday she could come and still see his face while that exhibit was up at her church. We've taken him to, this was a 5K run that Nick Kapushnik's family holds in his honor. He was a St. Louis pharmacy student who was shot and killed up in the upper right-hand corner there. This is Romel's mom having a memorial picnic and the quilt with Romel on it, and she's standing there by him. The little girl in the upper center block is Jemiah, a little girl from Ferguson that was doing her homework in her mother's bedroom when gunfire came through the bedroom window and shot and killed her. So we have seen over the years that by people coming out to see these exhibits and engaging with the portraits and looking into the eyes of each child, that they are impacted, and these children are no longer a statistic or just a number, but they are Jerome and Brandon and O'Dale. We took the portraits here to the University of Missouri. We like to go to universities like yours because we really appreciate the engagement that you have with them and the ability for the public to come out and see them. And also knowing that they are children, they are teenagers and young adults that are your age, and awareness of what's going on. So this was, we've supported Moms Demand Action in some rallies for gun sense laws. This is a quilt we made for Lucy McBath that we took to, when she was elected to Congress. Her son, Jordan, a very famous case there of her son was shot and killed because he was playing loud music. And in a very racist case you can look up there. But Jordan's portrait was done by Kababi, a fairly famous St. Louis area artist. We've had many artists donate portraits now. About over 250 portraits have been completed around the country. We're trying to do at least one quilt like this for every state. Sometimes, like right now during COVID, I feel like our families are so overwhelmed by their circumstances of just dealing with day-to-day life and COVID that it's a little quieter hearing from families, yet I still hear how much it means to them that their portraits are out there. So we went to Texas, and Peter has the mustache there, friend of mine, and he did all the portraits on the first Texas quilt. He's standing there meeting the families at an exhibit at a university in Texas. We went to New Jersey and did this exhibit. I particularly love the way the halos happened in the reflection, the photo over the quilts. This is at Rutgers University. We worked here with artists from New Jersey, and these are the moms of New Jersey standing by the New Jersey quilt of their children. This is at the University of Southeast Missouri State in Cape Girardeau last year. We had other programming with this. The Moms Demand Action have a Lock It for Love program where they hand out gun locks to protect children, like the situation of Brandon, the little boy. So they did a program like that while we had the exhibit up, and we collaborated with them. This is an exhibit that is frozen today in Southern California. It went up in March, and the university, Citrus University, has been closed down, and there are 16 quilts literally encased in this gallery. I find in a way that it's very tomb-like, and we have been exhibiting, we've been posting photos of it and hope to get it back sometime soon, but it just sits there in memorial. And then there is your exhibit, which we're very grateful that you contacted us and were interested in the project. It's a beautiful exhibit. I appreciate this so much. The quilt on the left-hand side there, the far left, is the first Chicago quilt. The two children at the top, Delphine, are Delphine's children, Thaisa and Tyler, brother and sister. There's another Chicago quilt there on the right, and the far right, I believe, is Tennessee. So normally we would go, when I would be in person, we would read each child's name on the quilts that are hanging and ring a bell for them. But because we're virtual today, I would like to just take you through the 27 quilts that we have, the Faces Not Forgotten quilts, and then we'll open this up to questions, and thank you. So this is a St. Louis quilt. You can see there's Nikki and her baby on the lower part. Again, 8 photos, 8 portraits are on each quilt, representing 8 children that die each day. And there's Brandon in the lower left-hand corner. This is a St. Louis area quilt. For each one of these children, I have the stories. There's Jared up in the upper right-hand corner, who we talked about, who had stepped off the school bus, caught up in a shooting there. The two brothers, they're two brothers, the center panels, the center panel and the lower center panel were two brothers just coming home from work early one morning, living in a neighborhood that is a dangerous neighborhood. Again, there was a shooting that was not related to them, and they were both shot and killed in their car that morning. This is a St. Louis area quilt. Chelsea there, the little Kiara up in the upper center panel. Jerome was riding his bicycle in the lower left-hand corner. This is a St. Louis area quilt. You can see the hashtag there. We have done some stories that you can hover over the actual quilts and hear the stories of the families talking about their child, like Tanya has the barcode on it there. We've not been able to really continue that project, though we'd like to. We need volunteers and funding. Here Zach has the barcode on this one. Zach was trying to sell his car and was robbed, and his car was taken and he was shot and killed. It's another St. Louis area quilt. All these stories, a certain percentage are domestic violence. Emily in the lower hand corner, she and her mother were shot and killed by a stepfather. They are St. Louis again. And then we went to Chicago. Here's the first Chicago quilt. Another Chicago area quilt. A lot of families like to send us a photo of their child with a graduation cap or, a memorial, something that was a moment in their life, that Daryl there in his graduation cap. Many had just recently graduated from high school. It seems to be a time period that's very vulnerable. A Chicago quilt here. Another Chicago quilt. Terrell in the upper right-hand corner was playing his drums at church on a Sunday morning, and was taking his drums outside and packing them into his car. Again, there was an altercation that he was not involved in, and he was the one who was killed. Heaven, the little girl in the center, had a lemonade stand in front of her house because she wanted to go to Disneyland. And there was a drive-by shooting. This is the lives of these young people every day and what they're living with. This is Chicago again. Another Chicago quilt. In Texas, the first Texas quilt. George up in the upper center one was followed home from school because he had a new pair of shoes on and was shot and killed for his shoes. Tennessee, the first Tennessee quilt. Georgia, little boy on the left hand, Andrew, with the left hand middle, left side, he was committed suicide. Also Jack in the center of this one, the New Jersey quilt. It's another Tennessee quilt. Several of these young men were related to each other. Florida, Babies of Miami. The first Florida, there's another in process now too. Pennsylvania. You can see that we've come to realize we will never be done. This is Indiana. California. Second California quilt. Washington, D.C., New York. So my information right there too, but I'm sure Devin will have it for you. If any of you feel you want to get involved with the project, I greatly could use people that are techie and interested. Also, if you do know a family who has lost someone, or you have a friend who has died from gun violence, the photo submissions are done through our Facebook page. Please have them send in a photo for a portrait.
We'd like to place a little reminder here that contributions to the sustenance of this church are certainly welcome through mail or the online Givelify app. Thank you. To the work of the church, which is weaving a tapestry of love we call community, we dedicate ourselves, and these are offerings. For things in our hearts that we hold in silence, we now take a moment to recognize them and to bring us into awareness of those things most important in our life through thought or meditation. Our service is now concluded. These are the words usually spoken in unison as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we're together again. We hope we see you next week. We'd like to take a moment here to honor our longtime member and friend, Jerry Gilman. You'll notice that it was nearly impossible to find a solo photo of Jerry. His devotion to Marcia and his family is easily observable. At the end of the photos is a video that his lovely caretaker and friend Dana Greco recorded. And you might want to just have a tissue handy.
Poem is called Conversion and was written by Francis Angermeyer. Look, God, I have never spoken to you, but now I want to say, how do you do? You see, God, they told me you didn't exist, and like a fool, I believed all this. Last night from a shell hole, I saw your sky, and figured right then they told me a lie. Had I taken time to see things you made, I'd known they weren't calling a spade. I wonder, God, if you shake my hand, somehow I feel that you'll understand. Funny I had to come to this hellish place before I had time to see your face. Well, I guess there isn't much more to say, but I'm sure glad, God, I met you today. I guess the 0 hour will soon be here, but I'm not afraid since I know you're here. The signal, well, God, I'll have to go. I like you lots. This I want you to know. Look now, this will be a horrible fight. Who knows, I may come to your house tonight. Though I wasn't friendly with you before, I wonder, God, if you'd wait at your door. Look, I'm crying, me shedding tears. I wished I'd known you these many years. Oh God, I have to go now. Goodbye. Strange, since I met you, I'm not afraid to die.